Chapter 8 of The Girl Next Door by Augusta Huiell Seaman. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Jennifer Dahlman. At the End of the String. It was past midnight that night before the two girls could settle themselves for a wink of sleep. So bewildering had been Cecily's revelations about herself and Miss Benedict and the conditions in the mysterious house that they found inexhaustible food for discussion and conjecture. The most interesting question, of course, was the absorbing mystery of how Cecily came to be there at all. Why should have her mother sent her there? Demanded Marcia for the 20th time. Perhaps she was a relative, ventured Janet. That's perfect nonsense, argued Marcia, for then Miss Benedict would have surely acted quite differently. If she had been the most distant connection, Miss Benedict would have surely told her. No, I should say that she might be the child of a friend that Miss Benedict never cared particularly about, and yet she doesn't quite like to send her away. Isn't it a puzzle? But what do you think of Miss Benedict being beautiful? I can't imagine it. And then, too, think of Cecily's not knowing that there was another old lady in the house, added Janet. What a darling Cecily is, exclaimed Marcia irrelevantly. If Miss Benedict knew how sweet and loyal and obedient Cecily is, she would be a little less strict with her, I'm sure. I suppose she doesn't want her to gossip about what goes on in the queer house. And, by the way, we must get our string in working order tonight. Let's send her other things besides notes, too, things she'd enjoy. And until they fell asleep, they planned the campaign for lighting the lonely hours of the girl next door. The next day they jointly wrote a long letter, telling all about themselves, their homes, their schools, their studies, and any other items they thought might interest her, fastened it to the end of the string, and dropped it into the dark garden after nightfall. Later they heard Cecily's light footsteps in the gloom below, and when they pulled up the string just before they went to bed, the note was gone. Well, she's evidently decided that it would be all right for her to take it, said Janet, and I'm relieved, even if she doesn't answer. I can see why she mightn't think it right to do that. And now we must plan to send her something besides, every once in a while. I should think that she would just die of lonesomeness in that old place, and with hardly a thing to do, either. That night they sent her down a little box of fudge that they had made in the afternoon, and the next night a book that had captivated them both. And when they pulled up the string the evening after, there was the book again, and in it a tiny note, which ran, "Dear girls, you are too good to me. I ought not to be writing this. It is wrong, I fear. But I just cannot sleep until I have thanked you for the sweets and this beautiful book. I read it all to-day. You are making me very happy. I love you both. Cecily." Meantime they had seen Miss Benedict go in and out once or twice, limping slightly, and had watched her veiled figure with absorbed interest. Who could possibly imagine her as beautiful, they marveled. And truly it was an effort of imagination to connect beauty with the queer, oddly arrayed little figure. Also, at various times during each day, Marcia made a point of giving a little violin concert at her window, and, at Janet's suggestion, had chosen the liveliest and most cheerful music in her repertoire for sad little Cecily's entertainment. The two girls likewise exhausted every possibility in the line of small gifts and tiny trifles to amuse and entertain their young neighbor. But there was no farther communication from her till one night after they had set down an embroidery ring and silks, the latest pattern of a dainty boudoir cap, and elaborate instructions how to embroider it. The next night there was a note at the end of the string when they drew it up. It read, "How dear of you to send me this! I love to embroider, and had brought no materials with me. And now I want to ask you a question. Do you mind what I do with it after it is finished? Is it my very own? What can I ever do to repay you for all your kindness?" In their answer they assured her that she could make any use of the boudoir cap that pleased her, and then they spent much time wondering what use she was going to make of it. 2 nights later, when they pulled up the string, they found, to their surprise, a small parcel attached to the end. It contained a little box in which lay, wrapped in jeweler's cotton, a tiny coral pendant and an old-fashioned gold setting, and a silver bracelet of thin filigree work. The pendant was labeled "For Marcia, with Cecily's love," and the bracelet "For Janet, with love from Cecily." The two girls gazed at the pathetic little gifts, and sudden tears came into their eyes. "Oh, Jan!" half sobbed Marcia. "We oughtn't keep them. They are probably the only trinkets she has." But Jan was wiser. "We must keep them," she decided. "Cecily doesn't want all the giving to be on one side, and she has probably been longing to do something for us. I suppose these are the only things that she had that would be suitable. Much as I hate to have her deprive herself of them, I know she would be terribly hurt if we sent them back. Tomorrow we must write her the best letter of thanks we can." So the days went by for 2 or 3 weeks. The girls caught, in all this time, not so much as one glimpse of Cecily, but they managed, thanks to their line of communication, to keep constantly in touch with her. Meanwhile, the summer weather waxed hotter and hotter, and the city fairly steamed under the July sun. Their own time was taken up by many diversions: trips to the parks, beaches, and zoo, excursions out of town with Aunt Minerva, shopping, and quiet sewing or reading in their pleasant living room. Every time they went out of their home on a pleasure jaunt, they felt guilty to think of the lonely little prisoner cooped up in the dreary house next door, and they both declared that they would gladly give up their places to her, had such a thing been possible. Then one night something unusual occurred. They sent down the usual note, and also a little work basket of Indian woven sweetgrass, the souvenir of a recent trip to the seaside. To their astonishment, when they drew up the string, both the note and the basket were still attached. It was the first time such a thing had happened. "What can be the matter?" queried Marcia. "Can it be possible that Cecily feels that she mustn't do this any more?" "I didn't hear any footsteps down there tonight, did you?" said Janet. "No, come to think of it, I didn't. She must have stayed indoors for the first time since we began this. But what do you suppose is the reason?" Janet suddenly clutched her friend. "Marcia, can it be possible that Miss Benedict has discovered what we've been doing, and won't let her come out any more?" "I believe that's it." Marcia's voice was sharp with consternation. "Wouldn't it be dreadful if it's so?" They sat gloomily thinking it over. "Well, what are we going to do about it?" demanded Marcia. "Wait till tomorrow night and try again," counseled Janet. "It's just possible Cecily had a headache, or felt sick from this abominable heat, and couldn't come down. Let's see what happens tomorrow." The next night they tied the basket and another note to the string and dropped it down hopefully, but they drew it up untouched, precisely the same as before. "It's just one of two things," decided Marcia. "Either Cecily is ill, or Miss Benedict has found out about our little plan and forbidden Cecily to go on with it. What are we to do? Keep on sending notes, or stop it? Suppose Miss Benedict herself should find one sometime?" "I don't care!" cried Janet decisively. "If Cecily is ill, she'll get better pretty soon and come out some night, and there'll be nothing for her. She'll be dreadfully disappointed. I don't care if there is the possibility that Miss Benedict knows all about it. I'm going to keep right on writing and take the chance." For a whole week they followed their usual program, nightly sending down a fresh note that they always later drew up, unclaimed. And as the days passed they became more and more alarmed. Something had certainly happened to Cecily. Of that they were sure, and their misgivings grew more keen with the passing time. "Can it be that she isn't there any more?" conjectured Marcia suddenly one day. "Perhaps Miss Benedict has sent her away." This was a new and startling possibility. The more they contemplated it, the more depressed they grew. If that was the case, then they might never see Cecily again, and the delightful and curious friendship would be ended forever. Their usual good spirits were quite subdued, and even their hearty appetites suffered somewhat, which worried Aunt Minerva not a little, though she attributed it to the heat. Finally, one night, precisely 1 week after the first unclaimed communication, they sent down the usual letter, begging Cecily, if possible, to let them know what was the matter. It seemed to both, during the interval that they left it there, that they heard light, almost stealthy footsteps in the garden below, but neither felt certain about it. An hour later they drew up the string. Their own note was still attached to it at the bottom, but just above they saw fastened a little scrap of paper, no bigger than a quarter of an ordinary note sheet. Both girls started with delight. "Quick!" cried Marcia. "Cecily has answered at last. Oh, I'm so glad!" Janet unfastened it, her fingers trembling with excitement, and spread it out on the table. It was not Cecily's handwriting, and contained but a few words. Both girls read it at a glance, and then stared into each other's eyes, half terror-stricken, half amazed. For this is what it said: "Will you please come to the gate tomorrow morning at 9:30? A. Benedict." End of Chapter 8. At the end of the string.